The woman lived a simple life. She woke up every morning when the sun began to rise and went about her day quietly. Her house was small and cozy, filled with small memories of her family. She did not have much money, and she did not seek attention or fame. Most people in her town barely noticed her. She worked at a small shop where she helped people with their daily needs, always smiling softly, but never speaking much. She had a calm presence, and there was something peaceful about her that people did not always understand. They would often say she seemed to be lost in her own world, yet her eyes held a quiet depth, as if she carried stories no one could see. The woman had a routine. Each day she walked through the town, greeting a few neighbors, exchanging polite words with the shopkeeper, and then returning home before it got too late. She enjoyed these simple moments and felt comfortable in her routine. Life had been hard sometimes, but she had learned to carry it with grace. No one in the town knew much about her past, and she never shared it. It was not that she wanted to hide anything, but she believed that some things were meant to remain private. Deep inside, there was a love for something that had stayed with her since childhood. She loved music. She loved the way it could speak without words, the way it could make someone feel an emotion they could not describe. She remembered her father teaching her to play the piano when she was very young. His hands were gentle, patient, and full of care. She would sit on the small piano stool, trying to copy every note, every motion. He told her that music was not just about notes, it was about feelings, and she believed him. But life had changed. Her father was gone now, and after he passed, she had put the piano aside. It was painful to touch it, to play, and hear the notes without him beside her. The piano stayed in her home, quiet and still, and she would sometimes sit near it, thinking about what could have been, but she did not play. Music became a private memory, a treasure she held deep inside. The woman often walked past places where music filled the air and would pause to listen, feeling a bittersweet warmth inside. She could hear the music and imagine herself playing again. But she would shake her head and move on, afraid to confront the emotions that came with it. One day, there was news that a world-famous pianist would be visiting her city. He was known everywhere, admired for his skill and performances. People talked about his concerts, about the way he could make a piano sing and cry and dance all at once. The town was excited, and even though the woman usually avoided crowds, something in her stirred at the thought of seeing him play. She did not want to be part of the excitement or draw attention to herself. She simply felt a curiosity that she could not ignore. She wanted to see him, to hear the piano again, even if just for a few minutes. When the day arrived, she decided to go. She wore her plainest clothes, not wanting to stand out. She walked slowly, almost blending into the crowd. People around her were excited, laughing, talking, and taking pictures. She kept to herself, letting the crowd carry her to the hall where the event was taking place. The air was buzzing with energy, and she could feel her heart beat faster. The pianist had prepared a casual segment where anyone from the audience could sit at the piano and play for fun. It was meant to be light and entertaining, and most people assumed it would be simple. No one expected much from the participants, and the woman was just another face in the audience. She watched silently, standing at the back, letting herself observe without participating. The pianist, known for his charm and kindness, noticed her immediately. There was something in the way she observed, quiet and attentive, that caught his attention. She was different from the others, who were mostly chatting or looking around. He smiled at her and, in his usual warm way, asked if she would like to come forward and try the piano. The woman froze. All the blood seemed to drain from her face. Her hands shook, and she opened her mouth, but no words came out. She wanted to say no, to retreat into the safety of her silence, but something inside told her to go. Something that had been dormant for years whispered that maybe, Just maybe she could touch the keys again. The audience chuckled softly, thinking this would be amusing. They did not know her, and they could not see what lay beneath her quiet demeanor. Some people whispered to each other, making guesses about whether she could even play a simple tune. The woman took a deep breath. She glanced at the piano, feeling its familiar shape, the keys that had once been her friends and companions. Her fingers trembled, hovering above the keys. The pianist encouraged her gently, saying, "Music is for everyone. There is no right or wrong here. Just feel it." Reluctantly, she walked to the stage. Her legs felt heavy, and her stomach was tied in knots. She noticed the eyes of the audience on her, some curious, some mocking, some surprised. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept moving forward. When she reached the piano, she sat on the stool, adjusting her posture, unsure of what to do next. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself remember the lessons of her father, the melodies that once flowed so naturally from her fingers. She could feel the memory of him guiding her, like a gentle hand on her shoulder, encouraging her to play dot. The pianist leaned forward and said softly, "Play anything you want. Let your heart lead." The woman nodded, her eyes still closed. She placed her fingers on the keys, feeling their coolness. The first note she pressed made a small sound, almost timid, but it carried a memory with it. She took another deep breath and let her fingers move, slowly at first, unsure of what would come next. Then something changed. She began to feel the music again. The emotions she had locked away for so many years started to flow. Her fingers found the rhythm, the melody emerging as if it had never left her. The room grew quiet, the audience leaning forward, sensing something unusual. The music was soft, but full of life, full of feeling, and it was coming from someone who no one expected. The pianist watched, astonished. He could not believe what he was hearing. There was technique in her touch, emotion in every note, and a depth that spoke of years of hidden talent. It was not a performance learned for show. It was music born from the heart, from memory, from love and loss. The audience was spellbound. People stopped whispering, stopped moving, and let themselves be carried away by the sound. Some faces went pale, some eyes widened, and a few people even wiped tears from their cheeks. The woman did not notice them. She was lost in the music, lost in a world she thought she had left behind forever. The piano and she were one, and the music spoke for her, telling a story without words. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, almost like everyone was afraid to break it. Then the hall erupted in applause. People cheered loudly, clapping and shouting, some even standing up. The pianist came forward, his eyes wide in disbelief and admiration. He asked her gently, "How did you learn to play like that?" She opened her eyes, the tears she had held back now spilling over. She shook her head softly and smiled, a small, shy smile. She knew she could not explain it all in words. She had learned from her father. She had played in secret. She had lived a life full of quiet moments that had shaped her music. The pianist understood, even without her speaking. He reached out, taking her hand and saying, "That was one of the most beautiful pieces I have ever heard. Truly remarkable." The woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had feared exposure, feared that her hidden talent would be laughed at, but instead she was celebrated. She realized that music had never left her, and that her heart had always remembered the way to create it. In that moment, she felt a connection with the audience, with the pianist, and with herself that she had not felt in years. The applause continued, echoing in the hall and in her heart, and she knew that something had changed forever. Music was no longer a memory. It was alive, and she was ready to embrace it again. The woman stood at the edge of the stage, her fingers hovering over the keys. Her heart beat fast, almost painfully, and she felt every eye in the hall watching her. She could hear whispers, some curious, some doubtful, and a few people giggling softly. She tried to ignore them, but the fear that she might make a mistake, that she might fail in front of so many, weighed heavily on her. She remembered the days when she would play piano alone in her room, when the music was only for her and her father. Those moments felt safe, like a warm blanket. Now, under the bright lights, with hundreds of strangers around her, that safety felt far away. The pianist stood beside her, smiling warmly, his hand resting gently on the piano. He said softly, "Just play what you feel. There is no right or wrong." His words were simple, but they carried a comfort that made her take a shaky breath. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the first piece her father had taught her. Her fingers moved slightly, brushing the keys, almost like a test, feeling their shape, their texture, the familiar coldness that always met her hands. She could feel the memory of him there, guiding her, encouraging her to let go of her fear. For a moment, she thought she could not do it. The fear of embarrassment, of failing in front of so many, nearly stopped her. But then, deep inside, something stronger emerged. She remembered the joy she had once felt while playing, the way music had filled her heart, even on the darkest days. She remembered the love her father had poured into her hands, into her fingers, teaching her not just to play, but to feel. Slowly, almost hesitantly, she pressed a key, a single note that floated softly into the air. The sound seemed small, fragile, but it held a memory, a story that she had never told anyone. Encouraged by that first note, she pressed another, and then another. The music began to flow, tentative at first, but soon gaining strength. Her fingers moved with a grace she had forgotten she possessed. The room seemed to quiet, the whispers fading as people turned their attention to her. There was a beauty in her playing, a delicate touch that seemed to speak of longing and hope, of sadness and joy. The audience was captivated. No one had expected this from a simple woman, quiet and unassuming, standing on stage with nothing but a piano and her courage. She did not notice the faces around her. She did not see the astonishment in the eyes of the pianist or the wide-eyed amazement of the audience. She only felt the music, the rhythm, the emotions that had been locked away for years. Each note was a word in a story she had never told. She played as if she were speaking to someone she had lost, to the father who had taught her, to the little girl who had once believed in magic hidden in the black and white keys. Her hands moved with certainty now, carrying the memories and emotions that had been silent for so long. The pianist watched closely, unable to hide his amazement. He had seen many talented musicians in his life, but there was something unique about her. It was not just skill. It was the emotion, the honesty, the way the music seemed to flow straight from her soul. He leaned slightly closer, listening to the subtle nuances, the soft dynamics, the delicate phrasing. Every note was perfect, yet it was not mechanical perfection. It was living, breathing music, filled with human feeling. He realized that she had not just learned to play piano. She had lived music. Meanwhile, the audience had fallen silent, mesmerized. Some were holding their breath, not wanting to interrupt the magic of the moment. Others had tears forming in their eyes, touched by the beauty and honesty of her performance. People exchanged glances, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The woman, who had seemed so ordinary and quiet just moments before, was now creating a world through music that made everyone present stop and listen. They were not just hearing notes. They were feeling emotions they had never expected to encounter in that small hall. Time seemed to stretch. The woman played without thinking, without planning, letting her heart guide her fingers. She moved seamlessly from soft, gentle passages to powerful, dramatic phrases that made the room shiver. She forgot herself completely, losing any sense of fear or doubt. Her fingers flew over the keys, as if remembering every lesson her father had taught, every note that had ever resonated in her heart. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a voice, a companion, a bridge to her past and her emotions. The pianist could no longer contain his admiration. He whispered to someone nearby, barely audible, saying, "I have never heard anything like this in my life." He knew that what she was doing was rare, almost miraculous. It was not only talent, but a lifetime of love and loss and memory, all distilled into music that spoke louder than words. He realized that she had carried this gift silently, waiting for the right moment, and now, finally, it was unfolding for the world to see Dot as she continued to play. The woman herself began to feel a strange mixture of emotions. She was nervous, yes, but also exhilarated, liberated, and deeply connected to the music. For the first time in years, she felt alive in a way she had forgotten. The piano keys beneath her fingers felt like old friends, welcoming her back after a long absence. She let herself smile slightly, even as tears welled up in her eyes. The music was telling her story, a story of love, loss, and quiet perseverance. And she felt a release she had not known she needed. The audience, now completely captivated, could feel the depth of her emotions. Some people leaned forward in their seats, trying to absorb every detail. Others had their hands over their hearts, moved by the raw honesty of her playing. There were moments when the music became so soft and fragile that people held their breath, afraid to disturb the delicate atmosphere. And then, moments later, it would surge with strength and passion, filling the hall with energy and emotion. It was a performance that no one could have predicted, especially not from someone who had appeared so ordinary. When the final note faded into silence, the hall was still for a moment, as if everyone was trying to process what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, applause began, quiet at first, and then growing louder until the entire hall was clapping and cheering. People were on their feet, shouting in amazement, some with tears streaming down their faces. The pianist stepped forward, clapping and smiling, his eyes wide with astonishment. He could hardly believe what he had witnessed. He reached out to the woman, gently touching her shoulder and saying, "That was incredible, truly incredible." The woman looked around, finally seeing the reactions of the audience. She saw their faces, their expressions of awe and wonder, and a wave of emotions washed over her. Relief, joy, pride, and disbelief all mixed together. She realized that she had shared something deeply personal, something that had been hidden away for years, and it had been received with love and admiration. She felt a connection, not only to the pianist and the audience, but to herself in a way she had not felt since her father had been alive. As the crowd continued to cheer, the pianist leaned closer and asked her softly, "Where did you learn to play like that? How did you carry this talent all this time without showing it to anyone?" The woman took a deep breath, her hands still resting on the keys. She tried to find the words, but her voice trembled. She spoke quietly, telling him about her father, about the lessons she had learned as a child, and about how she had stopped playing after he passed away. She spoke of the music she had kept hidden, of the memories and emotions she had stored away, and of the fear that had kept her silent for so long. The pianist listened attentively, nodding and smiling with understanding. He did not judge or question her. He simply appreciated the journey she had taken. He reached out, holding her hands gently, and said, "Your music is not just skill. It is life, emotion, and experience all in one. You have something rare, something extraordinary. The world needs to hear this." The woman felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of pride and humility. She had always loved music, but she had never imagined that her quiet, private talent could touch so many people, could move them to tears and applause. The audience began to quiet down, sensing the importance of the moment. They were not just witnessing a performance. They were witnessing a story unfold, a life revealed through music. Some people came forward, whispering words of admiration and encouragement, while others simply stood in awe, overwhelmed by the beauty and honesty of what they had just experienced. The woman, still sitting at the piano, felt a sense of belonging she had never known. She realized that music had been her companion all along, waiting for the right moment to reconnect her to the world. As the event came to a close, the pianist took the microphone and spoke to the audience, sharing his amazement at what they had just witnessed. He told them that sometimes the greatest talents are hidden in the most ordinary places, and that it takes courage and opportunity to let them shine. The woman listened quietly, feeling a mixture of humility and wonder. She knew that her life had changed, that something had shifted within her, and that she would never again take her music for granted. She had stepped onto a stage, faced her fears, and allowed her heart to guide her fingers, and in doing so, she had found a new connection to herself and to the world around her. When the hall finally emptied, the woman sat alone for a moment, letting the emotions settle. She touched the keys one last time, feeling the warmth and familiarity of the pia. The room had quieted down after her first notes, but the sound she played was unlike anything the audience had expected. It was as if the music had a life of its own, stretching out and reaching everyone in the hall. Each note seemed to carry a piece of her soul, a story of her childhood, her losses, and her quiet strength. The woman felt herself being carried along by the music, no longer conscious of the audience or even of the pianist beside her. She was alone with the piano, and it was as if she had never stopped playing in the first place. Memories flooded her mind as her fingers moved effortlessly over the keys. She remembered sitting on the small stool beside her father, listening to his gentle instructions and the calm way he corrected her mistakes. She remembered the evenings when the house was silent, except for the music, when she and her father would lose themselves in melodies, creating songs that no one else would hear. Those memories had always been private, treasured, and sometimes painful, but now they came alive in her hands, shaping every note she played. The audience did not see the memories themselves, but they could feel them through the music. And the silence in the hall was a testament to the depth of feeling she expressed. Her father had been a kind and patient teacher. He had always told her that music was more than technique. It was about emotion and truth. He believed that every person had a story to tell, and music could give it a voice. When he passed away, she had thought that her music would die with him. She had been wrong. The lessons he had given her, the patience he had instilled, and the love he had poured into her hands had remained. They had waited quietly inside her, and now, standing on the stage, they had returned. The pianist could hardly believe what he was witnessing. He had seen countless performers, but there was something extraordinary about her. Her playing was not just skilled. It was infused with a life experience, a depth of feeling that was rare. He could hear the subtle changes in tempo, the delicate pauses, the soft crescendos and diminuendos that carried the emotion of every memory she had ever held. It was not simply a performance. It was a story unfolding before him and everyone else present. The audience, too, was spellbound. They could sense the emotion, even if they did not know the details of her life. Some faces were wet with tears, some wide-eyed with wonder. It was as if the music spoke directly to each listener, telling them of longing, love, loss, and hope without a single word. People whispered softly to one another, asking who she was, how someone so ordinary could play with such extraordinary feeling. But the woman did not notice them. She was lost in the flow, the music, and the memories that were now more vivid than ever. As she played, the memories became sharper. She remembered the day her father had brought her to a small concert hall in their town. It had been the first time she had seen a large audience, and she had been terrified. But her father had held her hand, told her to focus on the music, and encouraged her to trust herself. He had said that fear was a part of life, but it should never stop one from expressing what was inside. She had remembered that advice now, and it had carried her through the first notes on the stage. The fear she had felt moments ago had transformed into confidence, fueled by memory and love. Her fingers danced over the keys, creating melodies that seemed to rise from the depths of her heart. She did not follow any sheet music or planned composition. She allowed the music to flow naturally, guided by her emotions and memories. Every phrase she played seemed to tell a story: the joy of childhood mornings, the sorrow of losing her father, the quiet determination to continue living fully despite sadness, and the hope that life could still hold beauty. The pianist watched her closely, fascinated by the way she could channel such profound emotion through her hands. Some people in the audience began to whisper about her past. They speculated where she had learned to play so well, how she had hidden such talent, and why she had remained so quiet and unnoticed for so long. Yet no one could truly guess the depth of her story. Each note seemed to reveal something about her life that words could not capture. The music itself became a language, one that transcended the ordinary, touching the hearts of everyone who listened. Even those who had never cared much for music before found themselves moved beyond explanation. She played with a freedom that only comes when one has lived through both pain and joy. Her body relaxed into the rhythm, her movements fluid, her eyes closed as she let herself become one with the piano. The audience could sense her transformation, watching as a quiet, unassuming woman became a vessel for extraordinary emotion and skill. It was as if they were witnessing a miracle unfold, something that could not be taught, only lived and experienced. The music told a story more powerful than any words could convey, and it captivated everyone present. The pianist leaned forward, unable to hide his awe. He could hear every subtle detail, every touch of emotion that shaped her performance. He understood that she had not been performing for recognition or applause. She had been sharing a piece of herself, something deeply personal that she had never revealed before. It was rare to see talent that came not just from practice, but from lived experience and genuine emotion. He felt privileged to witness it. As the performance continued, she allowed herself to remember more of her father. She recalled the evenings when they would laugh together while trying to play challenging pieces, the quiet comfort of his presence, the way he had celebrated even the smallest achievements. Those memories fueled her playing, adding layers of warmth and tenderness to every note. She realized that her music was not just about skill. It was about connection, love, and memory. And now, sharing it with a room full of strangers, she felt an unexpected joy and relief. The audience, too, began to feel a deep connection. Each person interpreted the music in their own way, finding pieces of their own experiences reflected in the melodies. Some remembered loved ones, some felt the weight of their own struggles, and some were simply filled with awe at the beauty of what they were hearing. The music bridged the gap between performer and audience, creating an invisible bond that was almost tangible. Everyone in the hall felt that they were part of something extraordinary, something that transcended everyday life. The woman continued to play without pause. She did not rush, nor did she force the music. She let it unfold naturally. Her fingers seemed to know where to go, guided by memory, feeling, and instinct. Each note was intentional yet spontaneous, creating a tapestry of sound that was both intricate and deeply emotional. The hall was filled with a richness of tone and feeling that made time seem to stand still. Every listener felt as though they were witnessing a rare and magical moment, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Finally, as the last notes began to fade, she allowed herself to feel the culmination of her emotions. The music tapered into silence, leaving a lingering sense of beauty, loss, and hope. The hall remained still for a heartbeat longer, as if the audience needed to process the intensity of what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, applause erupted. It began softly, almost hesitantly, and then grew into a thunderous ovation. People stood, cheering and clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes, others laughing in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. The pianist stepped forward, his face a mixture of awe and admiration. He reached out and took her hand, guiding her to stand and face the audience. He said gently, "That was one of the most moving performances I have ever heard. Truly extraordinary." The woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. She was overwhelmed by the response, yet she remained humble, quietly acknowledging the audience's praise. She realized that she had not only played music, she had shared her life, her memories, and her emotions with people who had understood, even if they did not know the full story. In the moments that followed, the audience continued to applaud, some leaning forward to catch a closer glimpse, some standing silently, still affected by the power of the music. The pianist remained by her side, whispering words of encouragement and admiration. The woman realized that she had reclaimed a part of herself that she had thought lost forever. Music, which had once been a private sanctuary, had become a bridge to others, a way to connect and share emotions that words could never express. As the applause gradually subsided, she finally took a deep breath, feeling both exhaustion and exhilaration. She had faced her fears, opened her heart, and allowed her music to speak for her. She understood that her talent had always been part of her, waiting patiently until the right moment arrived. Now, standing on the stage, she knew that she had begun a new chapter, one in which her music could be shared and appreciated, bringing beauty and emotion into the lives of others, just as it had shaped her own. The woman stood on the stage, her fingers still resting lightly on the piano keys. The applause from the audience had begun to settle, but the room still hummed with awe. She felt a mixture of emotions: relief, joy, nervousness, and a quiet pride that she had not allowed herself to feel in years. The pianist stood beside her, smiling with a kind of gentle admiration that made her heart flutter. He leaned slightly and said, "You have an extraordinary gift. But tell me, how did you learn to play like that? How have you kept it hidden for so long?" For a long moment, the woman hesitated. She looked at the piano, at the crowd, at the pianist, and then back at the keys. Memories surged within her, like a tide she could not control. She remembered her father teaching her when she was a child, the lessons that had shaped her fingers and her heart. She remembered the hours spent practicing in secret, the evenings when the house was quiet, the joy and peace she had found in music. And she remembered the pain of losing him, the emptiness that had made her put aside the piano, believing that the music had gone with him. Her voice shook as she began to speak, softly at first, barely audible. "I learned from my father," she said. "He was a music teacher in a small town. He loved music more than anything, and he believed I could play if I practiced and listened with my heart. He taught me that music was not just notes and rhythm, but emotion, feeling, and truth. I loved playing with him. We would spend hours together at the piano, laughing, learning, and creating music that no one else would hear. But when he passed away, I stopped playing. It was too painful. I thought I could never play again." Her voice grew steadier as she continued. She told the pianist how she had kept the piano in her home, untouched for years, a silent reminder of what she had lost. She explained that she had avoided crowds and performances because the thought of sharing her music without her father by her side had been too overwhelming. The pianist listened intently, nodding, his expression a mixture of empathy and wonder. He could see the depth of her experience, and the reason her music had been so powerful. It came from a lifetime of love, loss, and private devotion. The audience listened in silence, captivated not only by her words, but by the emotion behind them. Some faces were wet with tears, moved by the honesty of her story. Others were wide-eyed, amazed at the journey that had led her to this moment. The hall was filled with a quiet intensity, a collective understanding that they were witnessing something rare and precious. Here was a woman who had lived an ordinary life in appearance, but had carried within her a gift that was extraordinary. She spoke about the fears she had felt over the years. She had doubted herself, worried that her music would never be good enough, that she would be laughed at or ignored. She admitted that she had spent countless nights imagining what it would be like to play again, to feel the piano under her fingers, and yet she had not had the courage to do so until now. The pianist nodded, understanding fully that talent alone was not enough. Courage, timing, and trust were just as important. She had found all three tonight. As she spoke, the pianist realized that her story added an even greater layer to the performance they had just witnessed. The beauty of her music was amplified by the depth of her life experience. He felt a profound respect for her, not just for her talent, but for her humility, her courage, and her honesty. He realized that this was a rare soul, someone who could touch hearts not only through skill, but through the sheer authenticity of living and feeling deeply. After a pause, the pianist addressed the audience. He shared with them how extraordinary it was to witness such talent and emotion in someone who had lived quietly among them for so long. He explained that music was not merely a skill to be performed, but a language of the heart that could speak to anyone who would listen. The audience listened with rapt attention, many nodding in agreement, some wiping tears, all moved by the unfolding story. The woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had feared exposure, feared failure, and yet here she was, embraced by admiration and understanding. She realized that the fear had been hers alone, and that by stepping forward, she had found not only acceptance, but recognition. The experience was transformative. She understood that her music was no longer just a private sanctuary. It had become a bridge to others, a way to share the depth of her emotions and life experiences. As the applause began to fade, the pianist took a deep breath and spoke directly to her. You have a gift that can inspire many. Talent like yours is rare, but even rarer is the courage to share it. Have you ever considered performing for others, to allow the world to hear what you can create? She looked down, shyly shaking her head. The thought had never occurred to her. She had spent years hiding her talent, never imagining that anyone would want to hear her play, and certainly not imagining that the world could be moved by it. The pianist smiled gently. Tonight, you have already moved this audience more than you realize. Imagine what you could do if you allowed yourself to share more of your music. There is a world waiting to hear what you have kept hidden for so long. His words struck a chord deep within her. For the first time, she considered the possibility that her music could have an impact beyond her private memories and quiet moments at home. The woman took a deep breath, letting the idea settle in her mind. She realized that music had always been a part of her identity, a language she spoke without words. And now, having shared even a piece of it, she understood that it could connect with others, could touch hearts, could inspire and heal. Her fear had been replaced by a quiet curiosity, a tentative hope that perhaps she could step further into the light. The audience, sensing the depth of the moment, began to whisper amongst themselves, praising her courage and talent. People approached her, offering congratulations and words of admiration. Some shared personal stories, explaining how the music had reminded them of loved ones or moments in their own lives. The woman listened quietly, feeling a profound sense of connection and fulfillment. For the first time, she realized that her music could carry the emotions she had once kept to herself, and could create bonds with others that transcended language and circumstance. As the evening continued, the pianist invited her to sit beside him and discuss the future. He spoke about opportunities to perform in smaller events, to practice in new settings, and perhaps even to consider larger audiences. The woman listened carefully, absorbing his advice and encouragement. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but more importantly, she felt a sense of possibility. For the first time in years, she imagined a life where her music was not hidden, where it could reach others and bring beauty into the world. In the quiet moments after the audience had left, the woman returned to the piano. She sat on the stool, her fingers lightly touching the keys, and began to play again. The sound filled the empty hall, echoing softly, intimate, and personal. She allowed herself to explore melodies she had not played in years, letting emotion guide her fingers. This was her private time, her own rediscovery, yet it was also a preparation for the possibilities that lay ahead. The piano had become a bridge once more, connecting her past with her future. She thought about her father, imagining him watching with pride and understanding. His lessons had shaped her, his love had guided her, and now his influence had led her to this moment of rediscovery and courage. She realized that she could honor him not just by remembering him, but by embracing the gift he had given her and sharing it with the world. Music had been her anchor through loss and silence, and it would now become a way to step forward with purpose and confidence. As she played, the woman felt a renewed sense of identity. She was no longer just the quiet woman of the town. She was a musician, a storyteller, a soul capable of touching others with her art. The piano spoke not just for her, but for the life she had lived, the challenges she had overcome, and the hope she carried for the future. The music was a testament to resilience, to love, and to the hidden potential that lay within her. All along. By the end of the evening, the woman had made a quiet promise to herself. She would continue to play, to explore her talent, and to share her music with those who were willing to listen. She understood that the journey would not be easy, that fear and doubt might still arise. But she also knew that the power of music, the connection it could create, and the joy it brought her and others would guide her forward. The experience on the stage had opened a door, and she was ready to step through it, one note at a time. After the performance and the heartfelt conversation, the pianist turned to her with a gentle but firm look. "I want you to consider something," he said. "There is a charity concert coming up in a few weeks. It will not be a typical performance, but a gathering where people from around the world will witness music for a cause. I would like you to join me as a guest performer." She froze. The thought of performing again, in front of such a large audience, made her heart pound in her chest. Fear, excitement, and disbelief swirled together, making it difficult to respond immediately. She shook her head slightly, unsure if she could do it. I don't know," she whispered. "I have never performed for a crowd this big. I might not be ready." The pianist nodded in understanding, his eyes kind. "I know this is frightening, but remember tonight. Remember how you felt when you played, how the music flowed from your heart. This is not about perfection. It is about sharing your gift, the gift your father helped you discover, with others. You have moved everyone tonight. Imagine what you could do on a larger stage for a greater purpose." His words stirred something inside her. She remembered the joy she had felt as her fingers moved over the keys, the thrill of reconnecting with the piano, and the way the audience had been touched by her music. She realized that the fear was there, yes, but so was the possibility for something extraordinary. Over the next few days, she thought about the offer constantly. She practiced quietly at home, feeling the familiar warmth of the piano beneath her fingers. Each note reminded her of her father and the lessons he had taught her. She allowed herself to imagine walking onto a stage again, to see the audience listening, feeling her music, just as they had that first night. Slowly, she began to see the opportunity not as a challenge to fear, but as a chance to share something deeply meaningful. She realized that the piano was not just her private refuge, but a way to touch lives, to connect with people in a profound way. When she finally accepted the invitation, the pianist smiled warmly. "I am glad," he said. "You have a story to tell, and the world should hear it." From that moment, preparations began. She was introduced to the charity organizers, who treated her with kindness and respect. They were fascinated by her story and her talent, and they wanted to ensure that she felt comfortable and supported. She began to visit the concert hall to rehearse, and although her nerves were strong at first, she gradually grew more confident. The pianist offered guidance, helping her to adjust to the larger space, to the microphones, and to the audience that would soon fill the hall. As the days passed, her confidence grew. She realized that performing was not just about playing notes. It was about connecting, sharing emotion, and letting her heart guide her fingers. She remembered the first time she had played at the small event, the fear, and then the exhilaration of letting the music flow. She now understood that the piano was an extension of herself, and that every note she played carried a piece of her life, her experiences, and her emotions. Practicing became a joyful ritual, and the anxiety that had once held her back began to fade. The night of the charity concert arrived. The hall was grand, filled with rows upon rows of seats and a buzzing crowd eager to witness the performances. Backstage, the woman felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. She looked at the piano, its polished surface reflecting the lights above. Her fingers brushed the keys lightly, feeling the familiar texture, and she took a deep breath. The pianist approached, giving her a reassuring nod. "You are ready," he said. "Trust yourself, and let the music guide you." She nodded, drawing on the courage she had cultivated over the past weeks. She walked onto the stage with a quiet determination, the audience greeting her with polite applause that quickly grew as they sensed her presence. When she sat at the piano, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to remember the first notes she had played years ago, the lessons her father had taught her, and the emotions she had poured into the music since that time. Her fingers moved across the keys with grace and confidence, creating melodies that filled the hall with warmth and beauty. Each phrase carried emotion, telling a story without words, and the audience felt it deeply. Some held their breath, captivated by the subtle nuances, the softness and power, the emotion and skill intertwined. Others were moved to tears, touched by the honesty and beauty of her music. As she played, the pianist observed with admiration. He had known from the start that her talent was remarkable, but seeing her perform in this grand setting confirmed just how extraordinary she was. She was not just playing notes. She was conveying a lifetime of experiences, a depth of feeling that was rare and profound. He realized that her gift went beyond technical skill. It was a pure expression of the human heart, capable of inspiring and moving anyone who listened. The audience, too, was entranced. They whispered quietly among themselves, amazed at the skill and emotion being shared by someone who had once seemed so ordinary. They were witnessing a transformation, a quiet woman becoming a powerful voice through her music. Many could relate to the emotions in her performance, the joy, the sorrow, the hope, the resilience. They understood, without words, the journey she had taken to reach this moment. And they were deeply moved. The woman allowed herself to lose focus on the audience entirely, letting the music flow from her heart. She remembered the first time she had played in front of people, the fear and doubt she had felt, and how it had transformed into confidence and joy. Now, in this larger hall, she felt the same transformation amplified. The music carried her forward, creating a connection with the audience that was palpable and profound. Each note was an expression of her journey, of the lessons learned, the memories cherished, and the love that had guided her throughout her life, by the middle of her performance. The audience was completely silent, absorbed in every phrase and every sound. Some were leaning forward, others had tears in their eyes, and all were aware of the rarity of the moment. The pianist, standing nearby, could feel the power of the music, the emotional impact it had, and the authenticity of the performance. He knew that she had not simply learned to play piano. She had lived it, breathed it, and now shared it in a way that touched every listener. As the final notes rang out, there was a brief silence, almost as if the audience could not believe the beauty and emotion they had experienced. Then, slowly, applause erupted. It began softly, grew louder, and then became a thunderous ovation. People stood, clapping and cheering, some shouting words of admiration, some with tears streaming down their faces. The woman sat at the piano, letting the applause wash over her, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment, joy, and humility. She had faced her fears and allowed her music to speak for her, and it had been received with love and admiration. The pianist stepped forward and spoke into the microphone, sharing his astonishment at what they had witnessed. He spoke of hidden talent, courage, and the power of music to touch hearts. He praised her for stepping forward, for trusting herself, and for allowing her emotions and life experiences to guide her performance. The audience listened attentively, many nodding, some wiping tears, all acknowledging the impact of what had just taken place. After the applause had subsided, the woman returned to the piano, lightly touching the keys, feeling the intimacy and comfort of the instrument beneath her fingers. She realized that her life had changed in profound ways. The music she had once kept private had now reached thousands, connecting with people, inspiring emotions, and creating shared moments of beauty. She understood that her gift was not only for her own solace, but for the world, and that she had the ability to bring light and hope to others through her music. In the quiet moments after the concert, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about her father, the lessons he had taught, and the encouragement he had given. She remembered the nights of practice, the times of fear and doubt, and the moments of private joy that had shaped her into the musician she had become. She understood that her courage to share her gift had opened a door, and that the future held possibilities she had never imagined. The music had guided her, but now she was guiding herself, stepping into a life where her talent could be appreciated, shared, and celebrated. The experience had shown her that talent combined with courage could transform not just the performer, but also those who listened. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and connection. She understood that every note she played carried meaning. Every performance had the potential to inspire, and every listener could feel the emotions she poured into the music. The charity concert had been more than a performance. It had been a moment of transformation, a bridge between her past and the future, and a confirmation that her music could reach beyond the private walls of her home to touch hearts across the world. As the night ended and the audience left, she knew that her journey was only beginning. The pianist approached once more, smiling, and said, "You have inspired everyone tonight. This is only the first of many steps. The world is waiting to hear your music, and I know you are ready." She smiled softly, feeling a mixture of humility, gratitude, and excitement. For the first time in her life, she realized that her music was a gift not just for herself, but for others, and that by embracing it, After the charity concert, the woman's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. She had always believed that her music was a private gift, meant only for herself and her memories of her father. But now, seeing the reaction of the audience, hearing their stories, and feeling the connection through the music, she realized that her gift could touch lives in ways that were far greater than she had ever dreamed. The pianist continued to mentor her, offering advice, encouragement, and opportunities to perform, and she began to see the possibilities opening before her in the weeks that followed. She performed in several small events, each time gaining more confidence and learning to embrace the presence of an audience. The fear that had once gripped her at the thought of public performance began to fade, replaced by excitement and anticipation. She discovered that each performance brought a unique energy, a connection with listeners that could not be replicated, and it fueled her love for music even more. The piano had always been her companion, but now it had become a bridge between herself and the world. The audience's response was overwhelming. People from various backgrounds came to hear her, and each was touched differently by her music. Some were moved to tears, others found inspiration, and many simply felt the beauty of the moment wash over them. She received letters and messages from people who shared their personal experiences, telling her how her music had helped them through difficult times or brought joy into their lives. Each message deepened her understanding of the impact she could have and reinforced her desire to continue sharing her gift. Through these performances, she began to grow not only as a musician, but also as a person. She became more confident, more open, and more willing to embrace challenges. The quiet, reserved woman who had once shied away from attention began to step forward with grace and humility, realizing that sharing her music was a way to honor her father and the lessons he had instilled in her. She also discovered that vulnerability, once a source of fear, could become a source of strength when expressed through music. Her relationship with the pianist grew stronger as well. He became a mentor, friend, and supporter, guiding her through technical aspects, performance etiquette, and the nuances of sharing emotion through music. But he also respected her individuality, allowing her to find her own style and voice. He encouraged her to explore different genres and compositions, to push herself creatively, and to trust the authenticity of her expression. Under his guidance, she flourished, not as a student, but as a true artist coming into her own. One evening, after a performance in a small concert hall, the woman sat at the piano alone, reflecting on how far she had come. The keys felt familiar and comforting under her fingers, yet they also felt like a new beginning. She thought about her father, about the quiet nights of practice and joy, and about the journey that had brought her here. She realized that her life had been enriched, not just by music, but by courage, the courage to face her fears, to embrace her talent, and to trust in herself. She had transformed her private passion into a force that could reach and touch others, that her confidence continued to grow. And soon she began receiving invitations to perform in larger venues. Each new performance brought fresh challenges and opportunities. She learned to adapt to different spaces, different audiences, and different expectations, all while remaining true to the essence of her music. She discovered that performing was not about seeking approval or recognition, but about creating a shared experience, a moment where emotions and stories flowed freely between performer and listener. The joy and fulfillment she felt after each performance became a driving force in her life. As her reputation grew, so did her sense of responsibility. She understood that her music had the power to heal, inspire, and connect people, and she approached each performance with care, attention, and respect. She also began to mentor young musicians, sharing not only technical skills, but also lessons about courage, emotion, and authenticity. She remembered the guidance her father had given her, and now she could pass that wisdom on, helping others discover the joy and power of music in their own lives. One particular performance stood out in her memory. It was at a charity gala, attended by people from around the world. The hall was filled with anticipation and excitement, yet she felt a calmness she had never known before. She sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and let the music flow from her heart. Every note carried emotion, every phrase told a story, and the audience was completely captivated. As she played, she felt a deep connection, not just to the listeners, but to herself, to her father, and to the journey that had led her here. When the final note faded, the applause was thunderous, and for the first time, she felt a sense of true fulfillment and purpose. and the quiet moments after the performance. The pianist approached her, smiling warmly. "You have grown so much," he said, "not just as a musician, but as a person. Your music touches lives in ways that are beyond words." She smiled back, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. She realized that her journey had not been just about performing or talent, but about discovering courage, resilience, and the power of sharing one's heart. The music had always been there, but now it had a voice, and she had learned to let it speak. As time went on, she continued to perform, mentor, and explore her music. She traveled to different cities, performing in concert halls, schools, and community centers. Everywhere she went, people were moved by the honesty, emotion, and beauty of her playing. She had become more than a musician. She had become an inspiration, a symbol of courage, resilience, and the transformative power of following one's passion. The lessons she had learned from her father and from her own experiences had shaped not only her music but her life. She also found a balance between her public performances and private moments of reflection and practice. She understood that while performing for others was important, it was equally important to nurture her own connection to music. She returned to the piano in the quiet of her home, allowing herself to explore new melodies, rediscover old favorites, and reflect on the emotions that had guided her journey. These moments kept her grounded, reminding her of why she had begun playing in the first place, and why she continued to share her gift with the world. Over the years, she witnessed the impact of her music on countless individuals. Letters of gratitude, stories of personal transformation, and the emotional responses of audiences reminded her that her courage to step forward had created ripples far beyond her imagination. She understood that talent combined with heart and authenticity could inspire, heal, and unite people in ways that went beyond words. Each performance, each connection, reinforced her commitment to continue sharing her gift and to embrace the life that had opened before her. The woman's journey had transformed her completely. She had moved from a quiet, hesitant individual to a confident, expressive musician whose music touched lives in profound ways. She had learned that fear was a companion, not a barrier, and that courage, authenticity, and persistence could unlock hidden potential. Her music had become a voice for her emotions, a bridge to others, and a source of joy and fulfillment. She had discovered not only the power of her talent, but the power of embracing life fully, sharing it honestly, and connecting with others through the universal language of music. In the end, she realized that the journey was not about fame, recognition, or accolades. It was about connection, courage, and the joy of creating something meaningful. The piano remained her constant companion, the tool through which she expressed her heart, and the medium through which she shared her story. And as she played, whether for a single listener or a packed hall, she understood that the music was more than sound. It was life, emotion, and a testament to the extraordinary potential hidden within even the most ordinary lives. Her life had changed, but she remained humble, grateful, and grounded. She knew that the path forward would have challenges, but she also knew that she had discovered the courage, strength, and inspiration to face them. With every performance, she continued to honor her father, embrace her own journey, and touch the hearts of countless people. Through music, she had found her voice, her purpose, and her connection to the world, and she would continue to share it for the rest of her life.